And it's great to have Ian Castleberry joining us, Barrett Sports Media. And we've got lots of baseball and even a little football question to roll towards Ian today. Ian, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
How are you?
Doing better, man. Doing better for sure.
Yeah.
It's great to hang with you. By the way, John Shoup is back next week, so we'll be looking forward to getting Shoup back. And Ian, thanks for filling the void here for Shoup while he's been away. And we got a lot to get to today. First things first, the Texas Rangers fire Chris Woodward as their manager. I guess this should be much of a surprise at this point, Ian. He never had a winning season in his 4 years with the team.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised just because of the timing of it. I mean, the Rangers, they do have a losing record, 51-63. I don't know if it was realistic to expect them to compete with the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners in the AL West, but the Rangers did spend a ton of money in the offseason. They brought in Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, John Gray. So I think there was an expectation that they would be a little more competitive at this point, but I think this is also a situation with Chris Woodward where he signed an extension, but he signed through next season. So going into next season, do you have him go through that season as a lame duck, or do you offer him another contract extension? And if there's no interest in offering him a contract extension, then maybe the thought was, well, then there's no point in keeping him and let's just move forward.
Yeah, boy, you're right. The timing of it is interesting. Why not just play it out at this point? Texas, just over a decade ago, they were in the World Series, Josh Hamilton, and, that team has just fallen over the last few years and kind of a perennial doormat with the A's right now.
I've said this for years with the Texas Rangers. I think they should fire John Daniels. I mean, he's cruised a lot. He's general manager. He's been promoted to president. He hasn't given Chris Woodward a roster capable of winning. Yes, they signed some big-ticket players this past season, but there's not a lot of depth. The farm system isn't producing a lot of talent. I keep waiting for John Daniels to be held accountable in Texas.
Do you think that could happen after the season? I mean, you bring up a good point. He's been there for a lot of the drag with this organization.
It's possible. They do have a general manager there. But, he's been promoted, so ownership must like him a lot. No, I think John Daniels will skate by yet again.
Oh, boy, it always works out that way. All right, let's get to the good stuff, the meaty stuff, and that is Fernando Tatis Jr. All right, so he's already in rehab assignment, and he was just getting ready to get back with the Padres. And now he's been suspended 80 games for PED use. Remember last year what he was rehabbing from, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, was a motorcycle accident. He's kind of been a guy that kind of does what he wants. It's not really worked for him. In this case, he said he was using, I hope I pronounced this correctly, clostebol, which is basically got a couple of other players suspended fairly recently. So again, Ian, we're all like, what? How do you do this? How do you not go to your trainer, your team doctor? But what's even more bizarre, what did Tatis say about why he was using this particular PED?
Yeah, first to clarify, Tatis missed a lot of last season with a shoulder injury.
Okay, thank you.
He hasn't played yet this season because of a fractured wrist that he suffered in the motorcycle accident that you mentioned, and it's possible that he had more than one motorcycle accident, which he kind of let slip to some reporters. Fernando Tatis, tested positive for clostebol, which is banned by the World Anti-Doping Association. That's a 2-year ban in the Olympics if you were tested positive for clostebol. Now, Tatis said he was using it to treat ringworm, which I think is news to most of the medical community, that it's used to treat ringworm. It is used to treat skin disorders or skin issues. It's used in creams for skin therapy. It is not available over the counter in the United States, but it is available over the counter in other countries. So this is probably what happened. Tatis was using it for, a cream or whatever, but it is an anabolic steroid. And as I mentioned, it is banned in Olympic competition. So, his excuse probably doesn't really check out. I mean, it's plausible. that he thought whatever he was using didn't have close enough. But he's not appealing the suspension either. So to me, what does that tell you? I mean, he's not putting up a fight here. So it appears that he knows he got caught and is just going to serve his suspension.
Yeah, it blows my mind to this day, Ian, why players like Tatis, who signed this multi-million-dollar deal, in the hundreds, I think 100-something million, and
$340 million.
I'm sorry,
14-year contract.
Oh, holy crap! Okay. Thank you for that. That's why I have you on the show. So, if you're making that kind of money, you've got all the resources. It's just one phone call away. Call your trainer. Call the team doctor. These players don't do that, which tells me they know what they're doing is wrong. If they had any concern at all, they would reach out to their trainer and go, hey, can I use this? Is this on the list? And let them do the heavy lifting and figure it out. But when these players don't do that, sorry, to me, like, you knew what you were doing. You knew what you were getting yourself into. And there's always an excuse after excuse after excuse. But despite this latest one with the ringworm, how are his teammates reacting to this?
His teammates are not happy with him. I mean, the Padres are going for it. They made a big splash at the trade deadline. They traded for Juan Soto, the number one target in baseball at the trade deadline. Basically gave up all of their top prospects to the Nationals for Juan Soto. They also traded for Josh Hader, the longtime Brewers closer, Brandon Drury, who was having a great year for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and Josh Bell, who also came from the Nationals. So the Padres are going for it. They want to win. Their general manager, A.J. Preller, is going all in with these moves that he's making. And Preller was very critical publicly of Tatis Jr., saying that he was hoping that there would be some maturity by this point, that this is showing kind of a pattern, that they're going to look into these shoulder and wrist injuries. Was he being a knucklehead and irresponsible, or is this just bad luck? And as you mentioned, his teammates are also very critical, notably Manny Machado, saying he hasn't been a part of the team all year, which I think, is just saying, well, okay, we've been winning without him. We're going to continue. Mike Clevenger was a little bit more critical, saying you hope he grows up. It's about more than just him right now. And another pitcher on the Padres, Joe Musgrove, said you got to start showing a little bit of remorse. You have to show that you're committed to this and want to be here. So his teammates are mad at him, and understandably. I mean, he's one of the best players in baseball, only 23 years old. As we mentioned, a $340 million contract. He hit 42 home runs last season, and now he's not going to be available. This team has a chance to make a postseason run. Maybe they're going to run into the Dodgers or the Braves or the Mets and finish short, but just a lot of disappointment. And I think Fernando Tatis has a lot of work to do with regaining the trust and respect of his teammates.
Boy, agreed. I was in San Diego, I think, when all of this started to unravel. And, for Tatis, it's just, yeah, I mean, my friend's a Pods fan, and he's just like, what the hell, man? It's like they're kind of over it, too. As Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys. By the way, Ian's appearance via the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Line is presented today by our friends at Mountain Credit Union. All right, Ian, now we get to move on, and we got to talk about your Tigers. They fire general manager Al Avila after 7 seasons. And Ian, turning around the Tigers, that's a bit of an ask, but where did it come up short for Avila?
Well, first of all, I think Avila was a good hire by the Tigers. He'd been Dave Dombrowski's number 2 for a long time. It was natural to promote him after Dombrowski was fired, and it was also a good PR move, and it was good for baseball. He was the first Cuban general manager in Major League Baseball. But there's 3 things that I think ultimately led to Avila's downfall. One, he waited way too long to trade star players for prospects, and because of that, he didn't get a good return on trading guys like J.D. Martinez, Justin Verlander, Justin Upton, Nick Castellanos. Even this year, he traded Matthew Boyd, Michael Fulmer, and he waited probably at least a year too long to trade these guys. Boyd and Fulmer are free agents after the season. Castellanos was going to be a free agent. Martinez was going to be a free agent. So the return just wasn't good for those type of players. You look at other. It's unfair to compare this to Juan Soto, but look at what the Nationals got for Juan Soto, because they traded a guy at his peak value. they've also drafted poorly. And I think we talked a couple of weeks ago with the resurgence by the Baltimore Orioles. And I think a big difference is that the Orioles emphasize position players in their drafting, in their development, while the Tigers develop pitching. And while that can work out, you get pitching, but Casey Mize, Tommy John surgery, Spencer Turnbull, Tommy John surgery, Matt Manning has an injury as well. So compared to guys like Adley Rutschman for the Baltimore Orioles who develop and become impact players on an everyday basis, Avila just hasn't drafted that well, other than when he's had the number one pick. You know, Spencer Torkelson, number one overall pick. Casey Mize, number one overall pick. Those were no-brainers. Riley Green was the number 5 pick in the draft in 2016. Those were no-brainers, but they haven't done well at the bottom of the draft. They haven't developed depth in their farm system. He rarely finds, that gem that other teams may have missed out on, and it's all caught up with them. There have been a lot of injuries in Detroit, especially this year, a lot of disappointing seasons. Javier Baez, their big free agent signing, for instance, is having one of his worst offensive seasons. They signed Eduardo Rodriguez. He got hurt, and then while he was rehabbing, he went on, not the injured list, but unable to perform list, something like that. He left the team because he had marital problems. Just a whole lot of bad luck, but it's just Avila had enough time, and he just hasn't had the results. And this is long overdue for the Tigers to move on. Very disappointing. Big things were expected of them this year, and it just all fell apart.
Great breakdown. Ian Castleberry with Barrett Sports Media, our baseball update today, presented by Mountain Credit Union. And Ian, how about the Mets? They have Jake deGrom back. Now you got, to join Scherzer in that fabulous rotation. And the Mets are rolling. But yet they hold just a 5.5 game lead over the Braves in the National League East. So, Ian, despite the Mets' recent dominance, I'm impressed Atlanta is still in the race for the division title.
Yeah, Atlanta got hot when the Mets were at their worst, notably in June. The Mets were just barely over 500, while the Braves went on a tear, 21-8. So that really put them back in the playoff race. They're still alive for the National League East. They will make the playoffs, the Braves. I mean, they have a solid lead, 6-game lead for the number 1 wild card spot. But with a 5.5 game deficit to the Mets, that makes this week 4-game series. The Mets visit the Braves for 4 games. The Braves could definitely, make a big dent in that lead and put themselves right in contention for the NL East. Or this is a chance for the Mets to effectively put the division away here in mid-August. If they turn a 5.5 game lead into, say, 8.5, 9 game lead, maybe this is a situation where the Mets could put it away. But unfortunately for the Braves, Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom are pitching in this series, games 3 and 4 of the series on Wednesday and Thursday. So that might make it difficult for the Braves. They are facing the Mets' best. I'll be very curious tonight's game, Carlos Carrasco against Spencer Strider. Strider's having a very good season, rookie season for the Braves, but he did have some comments last week when the Braves played the Mets saying he wasn't impressed by the Mets offensively. He thought they were very lucky. It will be interesting to see if the Mets offense has anything to say to Spencer Strider tonight.
Yeah. Man, careful what you say, man. All right, Ian, before we let you go, let's shift to the NFL real fast. You're one of our NFL go-to guys, but I'll be off on Thursday, so I want to get your thoughts on the Browns. And should they have played Deshaun Watson against the Jags this weekend?
Yes, I think it wasn't a full season suspension. It still could be. If the NFL does successfully appeal the suspension and he is suspended for a full season, yes, then you don't play him for the remaining 2 games of the preseason. But even though people might disagree with it, I might disagree with it. The rules say if it's not a full season suspension, you are eligible to practice with the team to play in the preseason. And, from the Browns standpoint, the coaching staff probably wants to see Deshaun Watson, get him a little work, certainly in training camp, but get him a little work in the preseason. Deshaun Watson hasn't played in almost 2 years, so to see him, in some live action, you understand why the Browns wanted to do that. Should they, should he have been allowed? No. It's unseemly, but under the terms under the rules and under the terms of his suspension, it was allowed. So I don't think the Browns did anything wrong here.
Yeah, to me, I'm just thinking the bigger picture of everything that's gone on. A lot of teams, their starting quarterbacks didn't even play in the first exhibition game. I get it. Watson's a bit of a different case, not having played in 2 years. But it just, to me, felt like, the Browns, what are you going to get out of him in, 1 or 2 series? Thank God he didn't get injured or anything along those lines. But my thinking on it was, all right, all this going on, why put him in that? And already, he was getting heckled, and folks were saying, they were giving him a hard time in Jacksonville, and that's not going to be the only place that's going to give him a hard time moving forward. Interesting as always. That's why we ask you these questions, Ian Castleberry. Appreciate you, my friend. Hey, we got a lot of rain here on the west side. Stay dry, okay?
It hasn't come here yet, so I guess we have something to wait for here.
Stand by, buddy. Appreciate you as always, man. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll catch up next Monday.
Okay, great to hear from you, Pat. Please take care.
I will. Thank you, Ian. Really appreciate that, friend. There you have it, Ian Castleberry on the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines.